When it comes to the British royal family, Prince Charles doesn't have the most favorable reputation. In fact, the Prince of Wales has been involved in several scandals through the years. This is the tragic truth about Prince Charles. Prince Charles's mother just so happens to be the longest-reigning monarch in British history. However, Charles hasn't always had a peachy relationship with the Queen. When he was born, Charles was quickly taken from his mother and shown off to the royal courtiers because he was the future King of England. Ever since that moment, he's been subjected to the scrutiny that comes with the role. Jonathan Dimbleby, the biographer behind The Prince of Wales, a biography, asserted that Queen Elizabeth was detached from Charles as a result, and that she didn't spend much time with her infant son during his first year of life. Elizabeth reportedly viewed Charles within the perspective of duty. She knew that her firstborn son had an important role to play, and she reportedly behaved around him accordingly. We all know that Prince Charles is infamously known for cheating on Princess Diana with Camilla Parker Bowles. But what some might not know is that Charles and Camilla were involved far before Diana came onto the scene. Which begs the question, why wasn't Charles allowed to marry Camilla in the first place? It would seem that it was Camilla's dating history that prevented her from being a real contender for the role of Prince Charles's wife. As reported by Biography, her dating life wasn't out of the ordinary, but she was seen by the palace as experienced, and because the relationships were public knowledge, Camilla couldn't put up a pretense of purity. Unfortunately, Charles and those around him believed it was important his wife and future queen not have an extensive romantic history. Cue Diana Spencer, who was just 19 when Charles began courting her. She was seen as the pure, innocent, totally in love girl who was wide-eyed and excited about royal life. We all know how tragic Diana's life as a royal became, so we can't help but wonder what would have been different if Charles had been allowed to marry the woman he loved from the beginning. Getting along with your parents can be difficult. Unsurprisingly, Prince Charles and Prince Philip had a fairly tense relationship, as Prince Philip was not at all coy about sharing what he really thought of his son. Per The New Yorker, his father, Prince Philip, thought him weedy and spoiled, too physically uncoordinated to be any good at team sports, too scared of horses to enjoy riding lessons, and too sensitive not to despair when, at the age of 8, he was sent away to boarding school. But the problems that Charles had with his father didn't stop there. Charles was reportedly ruthlessly bullied at his father's alma mater, Gordonston Boarding School, and he only made it through because of his heightened status as a royal. Later in life, Charles followed his father's demands and joined the Royal Navy, but apparently didn't live up to Philip's expectations. Few things are sadder in life than losing a parent, and Prince Charles's emotions were on full display during his father's funeral. Prince Philip died at the age of 99 in April 2021, and while he had suffered a number of health setbacks, Prince Philip's death still rocked the royal family. Charles, joined by his siblings and 2 sons, led the procession behind Philip's casket during the official funeral proceedings. Charles and his wife, Camilla Parker Bowles, were also spotted visiting the pop-up memorials established after Philip's death, and both were visibly moved to tears. Charles said in an official statement on behalf of the royal family, "My dear Papa was a very special person, who I think above all else would have been amazed by the reaction and the touching things that have been said about him. And from that point of view, we are, my family, deeply grateful for all that. It will sustain us in this particular loss and at this particularly sad time."
He was a much-loved and appreciated figure.
When you think of Prince Charles, the first thing you probably think of is his divorce from Princess Diana, the couple whose union looked like an utter fairy tale, ended in utter despair. And while the press was certainly on Diana's side, it was painful for both parties. As reported by The New Yorker, Charles emerged as the villain of the piece, but it seems safe to say that the union visited equal misery on both parties. He had assumed that the slightly vapid teenager he was settling for would at least be docile. But Diana Spencer turned out to be the biggest bully he had encountered since Gordonston. According to the publication, Diana allegedly taunted Charles and told him that she never saw him becoming king. So while there was infidelity, the circumstances surrounding the marriage just sounded miserable for everyone involved.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Of course, Diana lost a good amount of security and protection after she was divorced from Charles, as she was no longer a member of the royal family. She also dealt with details about her husband's years-long affair going public. Prince Charles and Diana Spencer may have had a messy divorce, but her tragic death in 1997 threw Prince Charles's world for a loop. As noted by E., Charles was, quote, absolutely distraught when he found out that Diana was killed in a car accident, and he and Queen Elizabeth had to try to figure out how to break the news to Diana's 2 young sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Charles and his mother, who were staying at the Balmoral estate with William and Harry, decided to let the boys sleep. They relayed the tragic news to them in the morning. Charles insisted on traveling to Paris, where Diana was killed, to collect her body. At just 12 years old, Harry asked if he could travel with his father. Charles reportedly thought that it was too difficult a burden to bear for Harry, so the young prince stayed behind. When Prince Charles and Diana Spencer parted ways, it's safe to say that the fallout was disastrous. Charles's years of infidelity came to the surface, and much of the British press and public sided with Diana. But as time wore on, the public warmed up to Charles once again and accepted his new wife, Camilla Parker Bowles. Of course, with the release of Netflix's The Crown, the public's perception changed again. New York Daily News noted that Charles and Camilla had to turn off Twitter comments after the 4th season of The Crown dropped, as it reignited much of the public's animosity toward them. If you haven't seen the 4th season of the hit streaming show, Charles and Diana's toxic relationship was a cornerstone of the season. It certainly did not paint Charles in a favorable light, and public opinion once again backed his ex-wife. Penny Jr., a royal biographer, told The Times that Charles would likely be, quote, incredibly upset by the 4th season of the show, calling it the most cruel and unfair and horrible portrayal of almost all of them.
Camilla is who I want.
Prince Charles has been waiting a long time to become king. As noted by The New Yorker, Charles has become unpopular trying to carve out a role while waiting longer to reign than any previous Prince of Wales. The New Yorker also noted, the Queen's enduring inscrutability is often cited as one of the great achievements of her reign, and she has fulfilled her duties to everyone's satisfaction. She has walked the line pretty perfectly, serving as a figurehead of Great Britain while also staying out of politics. She's the neutral, beloved leader that most of the British people adore, but the same cannot be said for her son. One of the biggest grievances against Charles while he's been waiting in his mother's shadow is that he's highly opinionated. Even prime ministers of the United Kingdom have reportedly told Charles to keep his judgment to himself. Margaret Thatcher reportedly once said to him, "I run this country, not you, sir." So time will tell if Charles emerges from his mother's influence popular or unpopular. There's not much that's more painful in life than knowing that you're unliked. Unfortunately for Prince Charles, it's something that he's had to deal with for quite some time. As noted by The New Yorker, people from both sides of Britain's political spectrum have insulted the heir to the throne, calling him a plethora of unfavorable names on different occasions. And if you thought the judgment regarding Charles was only passed in politics, you're wrong. The results of a poll conducted in 2016 showed that only 25% of those who took part wanted to see Charles become king. So who's the alternative? More than half of the people polled said that they'd rather see Charles's son, Prince William, directly ascend the throne after Queen Elizabeth. As for why people seemingly dislike Charles, The New Yorker reported, even among those who profess to think him a decent chap, there is a widespread conviction that he does the monarchy more harm than good. We all know that people aren't the biggest fans of Prince Charles's second wife, Camilla Parker Bowles. Camilla was Prince Charles's romantic interest even while he was married to Princess Diana. So naturally, she's had to work on her reputation. Queen Elizabeth allegedly has had her fair share of thoughts about Camilla and even expressed them once after a night of martini drinking. According to the Daily Mail, the Queen vented her anger that he had lied about his relationship with what she called that wicked woman and added, "I want nothing to do with her." Charles then reportedly called Camilla in tears over the whole ordeal. Fighting amongst family is never enjoyable, but it's been the reality for Prince Charles and his son, Prince Harry, for some time. After the explosive interview that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle conducted with Oprah Winfrey, Charles had a pretty massive falling out with his son. According to The Times, Charles was particularly hurt by Harry's claims that Meghan and their son Archie had faced racism from within the royal family. During the interview, Harry also accused Charles of purposefully not answering the phone when he called, and of cutting him and Meghan off financially.
There's a lot to work through there. You know, I feel really let down.
Father and son reunited at Prince Philip's funeral. So suffice it to say, it wasn't the happiest setting. It was reported that Charles and Harry allegedly found time to speak to each other, as well as to Prince William and Kate Middleton, after the funeral services at Frogmore Cottage. A source told The Times, William, Kate, and Charles all left after about 2 hours, which was long enough for the process of getting father and brothers talking again to start. Of all the royal family members that Prince Charles bonded with, none forged a stronger relationship with him than his grandmother, the Queen Mother. The two were quite close, and Charles absolutely did not hold back while paying tribute to the Queen Mother after her death in 2002. As noted by The Guardian, Charles shared that he had dreaded the idea of his grandmother dying for some time, despite her advanced age. Charles said, "She seemed gloriously unstoppable, and, since I was a child, I adored her. Her houses were always filled with an atmosphere of fun, laughter, and affection, and I learned so much from her of immense value to my life." Charles later shared that of everything he appreciated about his grandmother, nothing came close to her sense of humor. The prince explained, "We laughed until we cried. Oh, how I shall miss her laugh." Apparently, Prince Charles's family members, including both of his parents, started questioning Charles's ruling abilities from a very early age. First and foremost, Charles was a sickly kid. As reported by The New Yorker, prone to sinus infections and tears, he was a source of puzzlement and some disappointment to his parents. His mother, whom he would later describe as not indifferent so much as detached, worried that he was a slow developer. Apparently, Charles's own siblings consistently made him feel that he was letting them down. Charles once wrote, "All I want to do is to help other people." Over the years, he has reportedly learned to not let the criticism he faces from his family and the public get him down. As for whether or not he'll become king, only time will tell. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more list videos about the royal family are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.